Hi, homeschool mamas. Here are 21 things that I would do if I had a kindergartner in my homeschool. I had 2 kindergartners in my homeschool, and I had 2 kindergartners that went to school. On Friday, I'm going to share about my story about my first day of kindergarten with my first child and why I wanted to homeschool. I have 21 ideas that you can include in your homeschool kindergarten. Here they are. First and foremost, read a lot of books together. As many books as you enjoy and your children will allow. And allow them to play while they're doing that. Let them be busy with their hands, playing Lego, drawing, doing dolls, whatever will occupy them. You'll be surprised that they really are listening. They can actually hear the story while you read for a bit. And a little bit might mean 5 minutes or 60. It entirely depends on your child. You do not need to do more than you both enjoy. Think learning opportunities, not school subjects. That's the second thought. That is going to be a discussion point that I have in my How to Homeschool 101 course, and it is something that I share on repeat because though we have come from a conventional school mindset, most of us, and we think in school subjects, most of us, we don't have to create a conventional school in our homeschools. Instead, we can consider learning opportunities. Like for instance, this afternoon, my 18-year-old daughter is doing a crayfish dissection. My 12-year-old is invited. This is not something that's part of his homeschool plan. He doesn't have to fulfill a certain learning outcome. It's not part of his science curriculum. He is doing a crayfish dissection because his oldest sister is doing it. So it's looking for the learning opportunities. Are there learning opportunities for a kindergarten child? Endless learning opportunities. Follow their interests and you will discover there are many things that they are learning at that age. Third thought, you could include 5 in a row. Have you heard of this curriculum? Not every child loves it. Maybe not every parent loves it. I loved it. I got to meet the publisher, which was the Learning House in Canada that published 5 in a row curriculum. What is it? It is really a process, a book that helps you process how to engage a hardcovered child storybook over the course of 5 days in a row, noticing the different elements of what you might learn, like learning opportunities in a specific book. They use a variety of different books. Sometimes they do drawing lessons, sometimes it's math or social studies or history or pretty much any school subject, but in the context of a hard-covered book. And I personally loved it. So I would encourage 5 in a row. Just fun to sit on the couch and discover learning opportunities in a storybook. The fourth thing I would suggest is to use workbooks, like Evan Moore books, or there are many different kinds of workbooks, but only if your child really wants to, because you're not going to hear me say that you should be using workbooks for the sake of a workbook or because you need to do something that's schooly. Nope. Here's why I think you can do workbooks. They save you when you have little kids at home, lots of young children, and it's kind of overwhelming. It makes you feel like they're still doing something. That could be the right time. It could be the right time to include a workbook when you've got some big life event going on in the family and you don't have time to attend to the child. See, this is when I think workbooks have value. But the biggest reason I think you could include workbooks are because your child wants to. They maybe are very young and they're not really ready for the same kind of content that maybe older kids are, their older siblings, and they want to feel like they're doing school too. So give them a workbook. But if they don't want to do the workbook, don't do the workbook. So fifth thought, learn clockwork with a simple clock. There are many different resources out there. There can be felt clocks or foam clocks or real clocks or old clocks, but you get to explain to your child how a clock works. You can explain the minutes, you can explain the 5 minutes, explain the half past or 10 to, all those concepts. Kind of useful in our day and age, since they still exist. Even though I am looking at a clock right now and it tells me exactly what time it is useful for them still to learn what a clock does and how it works. Just a basic introduction is all you need. If they're at that ability, if they can actually process what you're saying, then you bring out the clock. The sixth thought is nature study. This is so much fun. I like nature study still, and I'm not 6. Go outside, walk, take a look at the leaves of the birds or whatever's going on in your season right now. Discover what's hiding under logs. Sometimes we have mushrooms growing under logs. Some of them are edible and some of them are not. Take very, very special care with this. But there are nature study about mushrooms or about all sorts of flora and fauna. What do you discover when you look under leaves in a pond? Can you determine what bird is singing their bird song? You could learn about birds or lay in a field and stare up at the sky and discover maybe cloud types. Whatever you're doing, just hang out in nature. It's just therapeutic and it will surely create a lot of fun memories. The seventh thought is to create a routine and regularly use it. If this is your first child, then the use of creating a routine is more about you becoming familiar with what you most value and want to include in your day, but also begins to get your child familiar with how to be in their homeschool family, what is expected and how they engage. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to look anything like school. You don't have to wake up the kids in the morning. They don't have to get into regular clothes, although mine do now. I don't think they did in the beginning. I really remember one moment when the neighbors came over and the very youngest was not dressed at all. And the 3 oldest were definitely not fully dressed. And I just thought to myself, oy, classic homeschool family story. But they get dressed now, but they don't have to. You decide what's important to you and create a little bit of a routine in the day so that you all get familiar with how to engage routine. And if this is your younger child, then they probably are a little bit more eager to participate in the routine. They probably already know the routine, live and breathe the routine because they have older siblings that have been doing this. Learn flexibility when the routine isn't working. If you're like me, that one is really hard to learn because I like schedules. I like knowing what's in my day. I like feeling like I'm providing something for my child's education, and it usually consists of some sort of schedule, except that we're homeschooling. We get to be flexible. We don't have to do the exact same thing that we intended on our day timer every single day. In fact, I have yet to fill out this week's day timer, but I use my day timer as keeping track of what we're actually doing, not what I'm intending to do. But more about that on another time. So learn flexibility. Don't do more. I know that you're hankering to get started with homeschooling and create all this wonderful environment and the schedule and all the activities. I definitely was there too. In fact, I was definitely there, and I started in July because I chose to with 4 kids, 4 little kids. I was that. But doing more, it really isn't necessary. If you follow their interests, you can actually create all sorts of learning paths and learn all sorts of things with your kids and discover that they're doing a ton of learning if you're following them. You don't need to layer on greater expectations. And that will become a storyline in your entire homeschool, is to alter your expectations. Because as Julie Bogart so wisely shares with us, your home is not a school. Why do we use the word homeschool? Chart the weather. Begin to discover different cloud forms, temperature shifts, barometer, and thermometer use. You can find barometers and thermometers at homeschool supply stores, but you can also find them at your local store. They're very simple, maybe Walmart, somewhere like that. Dabble in all of this just for fun. You can easily print off a PDF on Google that lets you chart the weather from day to day. And every one of my kids have done this. And it was really useful for them to learn how to predict weather patterns. And frankly, it's just interesting to observe the natural world. Poetry tea time. If you haven't been introduced to that, it's just a beautiful, quiet moment in your week where you can read a poem, a page of poems, a chapter of poems. You get to decide. Maybe you have a bunch of different poetry books. You strew them on the table, pick up a poem, and read it while you're having a cup of tea and something special to eat. You can dress up that table, or it can just be a 5-minute event. But poetry tea time is fun to do with little ones. Explore art while you read. You could do the 5-in-a-row curriculum. That was pretty fun, and it explores a lot of art in the curriculum. But you could also pull out a book that maybe is about Van Gogh or any other impressionist art or any sort of art that you like, and ask them, what do you think about this? How do you see the colors? What colors are in this? How do you think they draw this? You could actually pick up many of these books at art galleries. Probably the best place you could find an art study book would be alongside art galleries in their bookshops. Let them play. Today I wrote a post or rewrote a post about the 11 scientific benefits to play. These are not my science. This is not my research. This is based on a book that I'd read. And it reminds me again that we need to let our kids play. But at kindergarten age, when they are just that age, when they're that young, they should be playing. They should be playing a lot. In fact, incorporate a lot of play and a lot of time to play into their day. And as a homeschool mom, take note of what they're doing. Recognize, actually determine to understand how their specific play is actually learning. Because it's actually learning. When they are playing at their pretend kitchen, they are trying to mimic the adults in their lives and create all the concoctions that you come up with in the kitchen. Or when they try to sell you a glass of lemonade, they're learning about money. There's all sorts of ways that kindergartners have opportunities to play. In fact, really, the toy business is directed towards a kindergartner. So many fun things at that age. Don't fuss about reading, writing, or arithmetic. Our kids, most of the kids, will learn how to read, write, and do math just because you've exposed them. Now, if you have an instinct that says something's not right, my child is not learning, I think they're not processing something right, then trust your instinct and look for help. In fact, this morning I had an excellent interview with Diane Geerlinks, who does exactly this. She engages kids that are probably not at a typical age where they're learning to read, write, and do math. And she says the same thing, that it is useful for you to identify that your kids are probably having a challenge, probably need to be assessed, and they might be able to be benefited by getting some outside help before they're all grown up and then have to deal with that as an adult. So you don't have to fuss, though, about reading, writing, and arithmetic for most kids. Identify all the opportunities for doing that. Like reading, you can be reading with them all the time, and eventually those kids will say, Mom, how do you say this word? How do you pronounce this word? That'll be your sign that they're ready to learn to read. Same thing with writing. If they see you reading and writing, they're likely to do it. So spend some time doing your own writing. Let them watch you do the journaling in the morning. But if they're interested in picking up that big fat red pencil, get them a big fat red pencil and then show them how to write their name or basic things around the house, or maybe their siblings' names or numbers or colors, all those simple things. Arithmetic, basic math, it's a number identification, being able to add, being able to count. Those things can be managed in the kitchen. If you're doing any cooking at all, you could be enabling them to count out the dried beans or Legos or Barbie pieces. Super simple to encourage accounting, addition practice in your kindergarten homeschool. Teach boundaries now. That is my 16th tip. Teaching boundaries will be your saving grace the entire homeschool journey. And it is not easy. And they do not learn the first time, or the second time, or the third time. can keep going. And yet they will. They will if you keep to it and you genuinely believe that this boundary is important and you really do want them to follow through with it. Here's something that I've learned from practical experience that has not helped my boundaries. When a child is told, this is the boundary, this is what I want you to do, or this is how I want you to engage me when I'm in the bathroom and the door is closed, and they don't follow through with that, because they don't always. When you enact that boundary and then you say, but I said you need to do that, and then they don't follow through and you get angry and you react to the stuff. First, you're a mom, so it's okay. You got angry. That's fine. It happens. And you overreacted. You were not appropriate in your choice of engaging them. Understood. I'm a mom. I've had many moments of that. And I want to affirm you, it's going to happen, so give yourself grace. But second thought, it doesn't help. I wish it helped. I wish I could tell you, please yell at your children a little bit more, because it will definitely get them to stop doing the thing you don't want them to do. And you know what I know. It doesn't work. So you can't do it. Or you can do it. Give yourself grace. Apologize. Explain why it doesn't work. But it actually only reaffirms everything that isn't going to help you. It only gets them to engage you in a reactive way, and you get a little more reactive, and ask me how I know. Teach boundaries now, but don't expect that they will instantly engage you the way that you want them to, and that they'll actually be respectful in that boundary every time. But seriously consider what you need and actually be intentional about instilling those boundaries, whatever they are for you. Teach them to cook. That's my 17th tip. This might mean for that child teaching them how to do ants on a log. Did you get taught that in kindergarten? Celery with peanut butter and some raisins on top. That's my memory of kindergarten and those big fat red pencils. Or mac and cheese, or have them chop veggies alongside you. Get them involved early, and maybe you'll be like my family, where my kids all know how to cook. In fact, I don't really know what I'm going to do when my 18-year-old leaves home, because that means I'm going to have to cook again. Maybe my 12-year-old will figure out how to cook, because my 15-year-old, not quite so eager to cook for me all the time. Incorporate games. I bet you're doing that. Okay, if you're a homeschool mom, good luck trying not to play games with your kids. I know those moms exist. I know they do. And by the way, I was one of them. I don't want to play games. I don't like games. I don't really like games. And every time my son, who loves games, explains every last detail of the game to me, sigh. Every other family member in this house knows, don't explain the rules to mom. She does not understand. I am not understanding your game. I am not understanding chess. I am not playing this game so that I can win. I'm playing this game to amuse you. So no surprise, I haven't played that game for about 6 years, and he doesn't ask. But there's a whole bunch of other games that we do play, and we have invested a lot of money in games. Kids love games, and there is a ton of learning in games. You name the game, there is some sort of learning to be had in a game. So invest time in your week to play games on the regular with your homeschooled kindergartners. 19th thought. Read. You read about homeschooling and unschooling and learning and child development. Just learn a little bit more about learning and how to engage learning. Why? You've got a lot of stuff to do. If you have a kindergartner, I can almost guarantee you also have somebody that's younger than a kindergartner. Or if you have the youngest as a kindergartner, it means you've got a whole bunch of, or at least one other child that's older, so you have stuff to do. It's about perspective. Perspective. When you learn, the kids don't always learn or engage or process the same way that we do as adults. And also they don't always process the same way that we do as full-grown adults with different personality styles. Do a little research on Enneagram, or do a little research on Myers-Briggs or learning style quizzes, and you will discover you have very different learners in your house that learn differently than even you do, and your instinct to engage them in learning is very different than they might engage. And that's good. because then you have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about learning and about your kids. But be open to spending time reading about all those things so that you have mental freedom, so that you actually feel at peace, that you know you're doing right by your child, you don't feel uncertain about your choices, so that you can be at ease. 20th thing I would also say is to listen to more podcasts, and not just mine. There are amazing podcasts out there. Honey, I Homeschooled the Kids by Robin Robertson. She hosts that, and she discusses all different paths of discussion on unschooling. And though you may or may not choose to be an unschooler, I can't say that I'm truly an unschooler, but I have done a lot of reading on it, and it has helped release all sorts of unrealistic expectations about how I'm supposed to engage my child, how I'm supposed to teach them, or how I'm supposed to think about what an education is anyways. So if you don't have time to read, plug earbuds in your ears and listen while you're doing the dishes or going for a walk, or just when you don't want to listen to little kids' voices anymore. And fun. Did I say that? The last thing that I'll say to you is make sure that fun is your primary goal. If it isn't, you're probably taking things too seriously and probably making it more difficult for yourself in the process, which I don't want to slag that, because that was me. I took things too seriously, probably still do, but I definitely did at that time. I had expectations of how it would go, and it had something to do with how it looked in the school system. You're not schooling. You have a homeschool. Can we call you a home educator? You're helping to facilitate an education for your homeschooled kids. So do that and have fun, because there is so much learning in the fun. If you have any more questions about homeschooling kindergartners or any comments on anything that I just shared, please put them in the comments down below, and I will get back to you later and chat about that. And I am going to share with you on Friday my story about my first day of bringing my first daughter to kindergarten. There may have involved a few safety laws broken, and I may have been sitting in the corner on the timeout chair in tears. My daughter was happy. Me, I was in tears. Okay, so I hope you and your kids have a charmed day. We'll talk to you soon.